High FM, 101.9 megahertz of life.
So from talking about the elections and the future of the city of Johannesburg, we are talking about the future in terms of education. Accounting remains one of South Africa's most stable, in-demand professions, and yet many learners believe there's only one route, one way into the field. While becoming a chartered accountant is an option, the profession does offer multiple career pathways. That's including bookkeeping, accounting technicians, management accounting, taxation, auditing, forensics, etc. We are joined this morning by George Sarpong, who is head of accounting programs at Boston City Campus. George, a very good morning. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're well.
I am. Thank you so much for having me on air. I really appreciate it.
Great pleasure. So let's just talk about accounting, probably for very good reason, has a reputation of being kind of in the box. And if you want to become an accountant, that's what you do, fairly rigid. But it turns out that, in fact, it isn't actually the case. There are different ways into the profession.
Yeah, so I think accounting, in terms of an understanding, it's a very broad field. So there are various areas. I think the general term is accounting, and we see them all as the same as accountants. But it is very broad in terms of where you can land up at exit point. Mm-hmm. But at entry point and getting into it, I think there are multiple routes for a student. So, for instance, you don't even have to have studied accounting to enter into studying accounting at high school. So, for instance, if you never did accounting, you don't have to have done that. There's an entry route if you've done maths, obviously, that lends you down a certain type of qualification or a certain type of route. And if you did maths lit, that also lends you into a different route. But then there is an opportunity for you to kind of converge at a particular point in time if you so desire it.
Right. And why would students, what would appeal to people about the accounting profession that would attract them to it?
Well, I think there's a number of things. Firstly, I think if you enjoy numbers, I think that's the easy one. If you enjoy numbers, if you enjoy problem solving, that's obviously one of the biggest ones. If you enjoy making a difference, and I think a lot of people miss that about accounting because they think that, it's purely about a bunch of people sitting in a room, not really worried about the rest of the organization. But if you really examine the type of career paths that a lot of accountants take, a lot of them end up in operations of organizations, because if you understand the financial part of the organization, you generally understand how the organization kind of drives it. You understand the different nuances within it, because finance is quite an important part of any type of organization. And so I think a lot of the things that does interest people is obviously around the money of it, and I think those prospects are great. I think the international roaming, so the opportunity to move to different countries and work in different countries, because finance is such a globally it's one of those globally transferable skill sets. Because, I mean, if you can look at a set of financial statements and understand it in South Africa, there's no reason why you can't understand it in a different country, because those are all internationalized. Everyone follows a similar type standard. So it is important when people are reflecting on accounting and the career opportunities, is to really look for what interests you. And if you can understand what interests you, then you can really decide and desire whether a career in accounting is important. And so I think those are...
You know what I found, it took me a long time to actually learn this or to understand this, is I'm a word-based person. Obviously, I'm sitting here doing this. I did my BA in English literature and comparative literary theory. I did my LLB. And I didn't realize until I was older and had been in business a while, that numbers, like words, tell a story. And that when I worked with people in technology, that people who wrote code are creative. And it came, I think, from a place of arrogance, to be honest. But it's an amazing thing, because numbers do tell an incredible story. And if that is how your brain interprets it, what an amazing way to contribute, and what an amazing career to follow.
No, exactly, 100%. I mean, if you can make someone understand what earning a little bit more will do for their business, will do for the growth of their business. I think that kind of brings it down to earth in terms of them saying, okay, so this is what I need to do if I want my business to grow. And in its way, it's telling its own creative story. It might not look as fancy as you said when you were writing out something, but I think in its own way, it shows that there is a bit of creativity that comes in because there's a lot of a thought process, and I think there's a lot of value that's added from understanding the numbers and reflecting on that, and obviously making a difference. By providing some sort of forecast, some sort of idea of where we're going, how we can get there, and how we can make it work for the business.
Explain to me or give me a sense of some of the different career paths that where people might land up if they want to go into this field in general.
So I think at a base level, there are 4 career paths, and obviously those can be split a lot into a lot more depth, but I think we can speak to those 4. One of those is a tax professional, so somebody who's an expert in tax who can do individuals tax, but also company tax. Then you can land up in what would be your financial manager role or financial accountant or accounting role, so similar someone who's responsible for doing the books, responsible for presenting financial statements, all of that. I think one of the biggest career paths, which is obviously a scarce skill in the country and around the world, is auditing. And so that's really the opportunity to, again, add value in a different type of way for a review of information that's produced by companies for standardization. And the last one would be specifically around internal operational work, which we call management accounting and finance. And there you're less worried about the external presentation of financial statements as you would in a normal accounting role. You're more worried about the internal aspects of the business. How do I go out and buy a new laptop? Is that appropriate? What type of laptop do I acquire? What type of value will it add to the business? And that's really what you're looking at in that type of career path. And obviously within each one, there's different type skill sets. So although there's 4 broad ones within that's divvied up into about 20
and
or 30 different
I'm
careers.
assuming from a Boston perspective, there's different ways that there are different career paths that they could start their journey on.
No, 100%. I think from Boston's perspective, you're entering into the qualification and you're being introduced to these different ways of thinking, these different things that are interlinked in the conversation. And then from there, you really have the baseline to say, okay, now I know how to think. Now I know how to apply what I've been taught. And now I need to go into the workplace and I use all that knowledge that I've been given, and I can apply it in different ways. Because I think that's one of the things that a lot of people miss with accounting qualifications. It's about teaching people how to think, because that's very important in the workplace, because the workplace keeps changing. And if you can't think, then you can't actually add value, because you're not really sure what to do in the workplace. So although the content is standardized, the real way in which it's designed is to help you to think broadly about what organizations are doing now, so that you're able to conceptualize when I go into the market, okay, I have some of the skill set, but now let me try and apply it to wherever I am.
So how would a student in looking ahead, them, their parents, hopefully that are advising them, how would they decide? What do they do to decide which direction to go?
Are you referring to when you're already in the qualification? Or
No. So somebody's finishing they're finishing matric, or they're finishing their gap year. They're saying, okay, I want to go to Boston. How do I decide? I know I want to be in this general accounting area, but am I strong enough to do that, or do I, what is best suited to me, etc.?
So I think the first decision that, obviously, as we started off the conversation, is making that decision to say, I want to go into accounting. I want to follow that career path, because that's a very important decision, because that'll help motivate you throughout it. It's not a very easy qualification. So once you've been able to make that initial decision to say, listen, accounting is where I see myself, then once you enter into the field, then it becomes slightly more nuanced, because once you're being introduced to the different areas, now you're starting to say, okay, so what's my skill set? I'm the type of person that has great attention to detail. I can pick up spelling error in a in a document that's only been presented for 2 minutes. I can already see where those errors are. And those are the type of people you'd think, you'd make a very good auditor, because you have that ability to find issues, to find problems, to see areas where we could create new things. Whereas if you're a very broad thinker, and it's not to say the others aren't broad thinkers, but if you're a very broad thinker, you're someone who's a real strategist who thinks about the future, you might say, okay, cool, I want to go into a management accounting role, or where I can enter in and I can think ordinarily about how this organization moves forward, how we look at our customers, how we increase our market share, because that's the type of thinker I am. I'm more broad thinker. I'm not a very detailed person. Whereas if you're a person who likes legislation, you like reading a lot, you like discovering things.
So
about
then you
it
might
into a tax route.
Yes.
And so I think once you're into the qualification, then you kind of find where your skill set is.
And it might surprise you. I think that we think we know ourselves, and we think we know what's actually going to appeal to us, but sometimes we don't.
That's it.
And we should allow ourselves, especially at that age and especially at that educational journey, I think it would be amazing. And I see here we've got Karen B., who's an educational psychologist, says, I'm loving your chat with Boston. Thank you for acknowledging that one can offer maths literacy as well. Really valuable conversation. It will be great to chat to Boston about other faculties as well. So, it's we unfortunately are out of time, but what advice would you give to somebody in grade 11, grade 12, or during their gap year? Is there some advice you would give them, assuming this is a field that they are interested in?
So, obviously, technology has made it easier for us to research a lot, and so for me, that would be first prize. I mean, that's the easiest one to gain access to. So start researching, learning up about what career paths are available and what different people do. Another one that I think is really open and a lot of students in high school do not explore is that linkage with organizations. So you could go to a different, normally your auditing firms are very interested in looking at high school learners and bringing them into the job environment just to show them.
Absolutely.
They recognize they can't do the work just yet, but they just want to show them, look, this is what we do. I mean, I think 3 weeks ago I was at an organization, I was speaking to high school learners just about Boston, but also about that career path, because I think those are things that just open your mind to say, okay, so this is where I can go. This guy's an accountant, but he's in education. He's specializing in that particular area. So I think those would be my first two. Yeah. And then my last one is obviously go into a support center at Boston or whatever institution you wish to study and just ask for more information. I mean, we're always willing to provide you with that to show you. I mean, we have people who've been in the profession, who's worked outside of education, and they can provide you with the things that they did. And I think all of that together will kind of formulate whether this is the right career path for me or maybe I must look at something different.
That is where we do need to leave it. George Sarpong is head of accounting programs at Boston City campus.